Welcome to Who's There, our continuing exploration of what is within you, your motivations, aspirations, your capabilities, and how you define rewards in your life that can inform your organization's leaders for better outcomes.
So today we're pleased to have with us Enrique Rubio, who is the founder of HackingHR. Enrique brings a really rich experience having come from Venezuela just 10 years ago to the US and making some really great headway in rethinking how HR would work. And actually, you'll hear him describe how HR may become one of the most important parts of an organization and how they design their human resources in the workforce.
First off, Enrique's passion and positivity that he brings to some really challenging solutions. And we did get into some really challenging territory here. But the fact that he's able to see the problem so clearly and actually have some ideas on what those solution paths are. And he's out there working on it. As you said, he very quickly kind of built this organization through LinkedIn, and he's got tens of thousands of members on it now. And for me, that was really the biggest takeaway is he's approaching this with more passion and more positivity than I've seen in the HR space in quite some time.
Well, and further, Kurt, I think he has an extreme humanist approach to this about what the importance of the individual is. And the idea that where we may have our own specialty, he's a real proponent of having what I've heard him say, the diagonal. You have areas of specialty that kind of can converge to make you a greater person in a setting where you are a resource for that organization in ways that enrich the people around you and the benefits to the company as a whole. So some really intriguing thoughts around that.
Yeah, and he obviously, he told his story, his own personal experience of kind of feeling a little boxed in one of his career steps along the way. And I think that ties into the work he's trying to do now. So I think people are really going to get a lot from this, not just HR folks, but any leaders that are figuring out, post-COVID, what does my organization look like? How do I bounce back from this? How do we really achieve resilience and growth and sustainability? And then, of course, even just employees who want to kind of hear someone that understands them and has some thoughts for how to make things better. I think that they're going to take a lot away from this.
So let's welcome Enrique Rubio.
Our guest today is Enrique Rubio, who started up HackingHR. Enrique and I met a year or more ago based on the work that I was doing around employee experience. And we're really happy to have him here. He's built an entire community from what I think is a very short period of time to accomplish what he has. And so with that, Enrique, I wanted to just give you a minute, kind of let us know, where you're coming from, who you are, and the work you've been doing, the last year or two.
Well, awesome. Kurt, Robert, thank you so much for having me in your new endeavor with these interviews. You've already mentioned some good friends, part of your guests. I'm really happy to be here. Just a couple of things about me. I was born in Venezuela. I came to the US 10 years ago, and I created HackingHR 3 years ago. But really, our biggest growth has happened in between last year, 2019, and 2020. I'm not sure when you're going to be putting this out, but we're almost at the end of 2020, less than 10 days left. And the past couple of years have been great for this community. We continue to bring HR leaders, practitioners together from the HR space, with all of them interested in learning, collaborating, sharing, supporting, challenging each other around all the things that are at the intersection of future of work, technology, organizations, people transformation, innovation, and the impact, of course, in the HR space. And one thing else that I want to add to this is people always ask me, like, how have you grown so fast? Or, how do you bring all these amazing people? And not always do I think too much about that question, but when we were talking at the beginning offline of this chat, I was thinking that I am appealing to the selflessness and the generosity, the authenticity, and the willingness of people to give back to the community. And that's actually how I see it. Everybody who comes together in this community it's coming because they want to learn something and they want to give something back. And I think that's beautiful, to be honest. I think that you don't find that all the time, but when you find it, hold on to it, because it's really valuable.
So that last point you made is that was not what I was expecting. I will say I have taken to, and I don't know the LinkedIn algorithm. I don't know what you see of my posts or not, but
sometimes
I've actually taken to putting the word real in front of authentic. Yeah. And that's a big challenge for me. Like, it doesn't feel like you should have to have real in front of authentic. Yeah. Authentic should mean authentic, but it's really been a challenge for me. But I think that's a great pivot into what I wanted to really chat with you, because as you know, we talked with Todd Churches last week, and Todd, of course, has this great history, and he's using that history to then support leaders and help them kind of think different, for lack of a better term, and really kind of tackle the challenges that are happening today and prepare for the future. When I think about you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think about you really having a tight hold, not only on the present day, but also on where things are going or where you'd like to see things going. Yeah. And so I'd really just wanted to start the conversation there. Where are we today? Obviously, since March, COVID has made things a lot different, and this was not something any of us prepared for. Yeah. But we have our present situation. We hope COVID kind of, we got a vaccine and things, hope it kind of settles down. But where are we going? How do we help HR folks, support organizations and the employees at the same time and get to where we need to be for 2021, 2023, and 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll begin by saying that we are dragging a lot of problems that we had before the pandemic, and the pandemic has either re-unearthed them, if you will, or amplified them. And so a lot of those problems were the big elephant in the room, right? Everybody knew it was there, but nobody wanted to address those problems. We were either thinking they will go away by themselves, or maybe we just put something on the surface of these problems, and we don't really address what's causing these problems. Let me give you a few examples of this: income, social inequality, mental health, the mental health implications of an overworked, overwhelmed society. We are seeing the impact of political nastiness, the political system in our country, but in many other countries in the world, that has an impact in the workplace and the way people live their lives. So all of these things, and I'm just mentioning, 2 or 3 of them, all of these things were problems before, diversity, and they continue to be problems now, amplified, of course, by COVID. And on top of that, we got the new problems created by COVID. So we got a lot of challenges ahead of us. And this is where what I envision. I think that even though we've gotten all these challenges and all these problems, the flip side of that is by the sheer fact that we were forced to, we have become more human through this horrible experience of the pandemic. And you've seen HR rising up to the challenges of these days, still somewhat reactively, but getting there, you've seen a lot of businesses, especially small to medium-sized companies, the leaders of those companies thinking, my goodness, it took me so much time to build this company. And not only am I going to suffer by shutting it down, I'm going to have to lay people off. And that makes me suffer as well. So that's created this humanity, added humanity, to the conversation. So where I see things going is we got to resolve all these problems, and we got to make sure that we do it in a way that is human, that we put the humans in the center of the work that we do as organizations, that we put humans in the center of the work that we do in HR. Now, to resolve these existing problems with the new layer of COVID and whatever added problems we're going to see in the years to come, I believe that HR has the potential. And I don't say this lightly. I say this because I truly believe in it. I think HR has the potential to become the trailblazer, leading people and organizations into the future of work. I believe that HR is the leader that our organizations need. That's the potential. Now we got to build to deliver that potential. We got to build the skills and the capabilities. And that's the big gap that at least me and many others, being HackingHR and others in other groups are trying to close. We're trying to close the gap between making it happen and just having the potential to make it happen. So that's in a nutshell, a little bit of the things that I am envisioning.
So Enrique, I think you're lucky coming to talk with us today, because our conversation is much narrower than the global impact.
We're going to make it easier. You're going to make it easy on me.
But at the same time, I think we do have a channel of thought that will feed what you and your associates are focused on. And I love the fact that you said a much more humanistic approach evolving in the HR space. And I think that's what Kurt and I are talking about.
Yeah.
Is the human aspect of the theme, who's there. And just to kind of move our thoughts to that, the who's there theme is trying to uncover personally what each of us finds is important for our own journey. Mm. And as we discover that, how does our organization or other parts of our life become informed by it to make better use of us as individuals? Mm. Now, I got on this train of thought with having been around reward systems as a communicator for decades now. That's my field. Thinking I'm always hearing this word total rewards, but at the same time, I think about my own life and to what extent has my organization fulfilled my sense of reward from the customary sense of compensation, pay, benefits, perks, learning, development, all those things, versus things I've done in combination with or external to work that I feel really rewarded about in my life that become stories I can tell. So kind of with that backdrop, let me just kind of pivot to a question to you personally around where you find your own sense of reward from the organizations that you've been in or lead, or for your own human achievement. Tell me how you feel about that sense of reward for yourself.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, and it varies for a lot of people. For me, just I think it comes down to freedom. I think it comes down to freedom. I need the money because my creditors don't get paid with my freedom. They get paid with money. So I need to be well paid and, financially rewarded and compensated for my job. But once you meet a minimum threshold of fairness in the way you're compensated and rewarded financially at work, to me, what comes after that is freedom. Of course, if I'm underpaid, my basic Maslow kind of needs won't be met, and I'm going to have a different kind of thinking about this. But if I am rewarded at the level of what I'm giving back to the company, what comes after that is the freedom to make decisions, the freedom to create, the freedom to be who I am at work, the freedom to explore opportunities, to mess up, to learn, to count on the organization to back me up when I mess up, but also to give me credit when I succeed. And this that I'm describing is not something unique to me. Research shows that people want that at work. They want to grow at work. And to grow, you have to be given the freedom and the platform to grow. And it's intuitive, right? Robert, if you work for me, in my organization, and I know that Enrique micromanaging Robert gets only 10% of Robert, but Enrique giving Robert freedom gets 95% of Robert. Damn, it is just intuitive to give Robert the freedom to give me the 95% that I want to get from him. But when you go and see the way organizations operate, they do exactly what is counterintuitive, meaning they micromanage you. They tell you, no, Robert, that's not the way. I know you want to be creative. Yeah, I mean, that's Robert. I mean, we don't care about this. You got to follow the rules. And by following the rules, I know that I get 10% of you, but I'm stopping you from giving me the other 85%. So that to me is what I expect as reward from anything that I do. That freedom to create, to make mistakes, to be guided and led, and to be, for my performance gaps to be addressed when I messed up, but also for the credit to be given when I do what's right. And ultimately, once again, it's the freedom to be who you are at work. I mean, I talked a little bit about mental health, challenges at work. And I'm not a psychologist. I have not studied this based on my own empirical, exercise of asking the big community that I've created. When I look at a lot to the people that are dealing with, stress, frustration, depression at work, I dig a little deeper through my questions, and I find out that they can't be who they really are. They have to wear a mask at work. They have to be somebody else. How hard it is to commute, well, before the pandemic, commute 3 hours, 4 hours to go to work, do the work, and also fake who you are. So it's like, wow, from everywhere where you look at, it's like the opposite to what you should be actually doing. So anyway, that's a long answer to say that to me, the rewards come via freedom.
I laughed a little exuberantly just then because when you said, oh, that's just Robert being Robert. And I've heard those words in my workplace, and I've had to have them rein me in. So you really connected. I love how you followed that up. I'll throw it back to Kurt. I saw you're intrigued by so many points Enrique's making, which aligns with how we've been talking.
I was going to say, Enrique, you and I hit it off right away because we see the world. I won't say the same, but there's a lot of overlap in how we see the world. The things you touched on are I think real challenges for me. We talked about this with Todd a little bit. I'd like to touch on it a bit with you, but when I started working, which was a long time ago, not as long as Robert, of course, but pretty close.
What are you trying to say?
Whose beard is grayer? That's what I'm saying.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long road, but what when I would get into an organization and I would prove myself to be, relatively smart and responsible and reliable and all these things, I was within organizations that would say, hey, we need help over in this area, or we need help up here. And if you're interested in that, we're going to take you and give you that ability to, say, move into a new area and learn and expand and try new things. And when the internet hit and I started working at startups, I loved it. I was such a fan of startups because you go in as one of 30 employees and be doing the job of 3 or 4 people. And that was a lot of work. I was used to doing 80 hours a week. But I didn't mind it because, to your point, that freedom of, we need, some code done. So you do the code, and we need a marketing campaign, you do that. And we need this. And I love that ability to kind of have things change and learn more and kind of expand and grow. What I've seen the last particularly 10 years, for better or worse, and it could just be my experience, maybe it's not across it, but is this idea of specialization, those boxes you talked about.
Yeah.
I was working at Center for Creative Leadership for 2 years, and they had an experience you'd go through called social identity, and this idea that you have multiple identities, right? Yeah. 100 years ago it was multiple masks, now it's multiple identities. But I think that the goal to really having a sustainable system comes from understanding that humans are not able to fit into a box, that humans do want to grow, that they do want to expand. It's not always about I need to make more money. Sometimes it's just I want to move from customer service to project management. Yeah. And those paths seem to be getting more difficult. Yeah. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that is a very powerful, topic to talk about. Let me give you a couple of my perspectives on that. The first one is that I believe that the people that will succeed in the future of work are those with the capacity to connect seemingly disconnected dots. And what I mean by that is that if you are a technologist who happen to work in the HR space, you will probably do better than somebody who has been in the HR space for 40 years. And the reason for that is because you are bringing another set of skills, another set of capabilities, a broader horizon that will help you make better decisions, that will help you be more versatile in the work that you are doing, as opposed to just doing the same thing forever. So I'm a firm believer in the idea of people looking into different fields of expertise and not necessarily growing equally in all of them, because that's just impossible. But even if you're growing faster in your own vertical, at least, not do it just vertically, but maybe do it more diagonally, right? Meaning you're growing in your own field of expertise, but you're connecting dots that are across different fields of different verticals, different silos, if you will. I think that's going to be very, very powerful going forward. Let me give you one example of this. And I'm going to touch on something that Robert said before about his expertise in the total reward space. Somebody who only thinks about total rewards without, for example, thinking about remote work, demographic shift, migration, globalization, technology, won't be able to make effective decisions of what a good total reward strategy looks like. Because if you don't know where people are moving to, where they are moving from, how the demographics are changing in your region, your country, your city, your industry, your company, you won't be able to offer that talent the best incentives to work for you. So you may be the best total rewards strategies in the world, but if you don't connect that to other dots, then you are, you're not creating all the value that you could potentially create. So I think that those boxes should be, absolutely broken down. And even though you may want somebody doing some work in any given vertical, you got to make sure that they have the possibility, if they don't come already with that background, that they have the possibility to connect dots across different areas. And the other thing that I want to add to that is that because of the amount of information and knowledge that we have at our fingertips today, the learning curve about basically anything in the world is way shorter than anything that we've experienced in the past. And I'm not talking about, an astrophysicist or, Dr. Anthony Fauci. To be Anthony Fauci, you gotta be, Anthony Fauci, right? You gotta be the expert in, one thing for the past 60 years. But I'm talking if you want to be, if you want to move from engineering to, say, total rewards, it's going to take you some time to build that. But today you have way more information to learn about that field, than whatever you had 25, 30, 40 years ago. So the learning curve is way faster. So this is what happens, Kurt, that even within one vertical, if I hire you to be my total rewards strategist and you come with a different background, in the past, I would have expected you to master the skills of that field maybe in a couple of years. Right now, maybe in 3 months, you already know the basics and you want to move on to the next thing. And the next thing could be in the same vertical. It could be another project related to total rewards. But if I hire you to do something and I don't update the projects or the skills or the something that I'm asking you to do, you're going to get bored. You are going to get bored. And if I was getting 85, 95% of you in the first 6 months, if I don't change that curve will start to, with a negative slope, and I'm going to start, getting less and less and less from you. So anyway, this is a long answer to say that I believe in the idea of bringing people with diverse expertise, diverse backgrounds, but I also believe that even if you have expertise in one vertical, you have to be given the opportunities to grow and grow and grow. S-curve kind of thing. You learn, you quickly go through the learning curve, and then once you get to the plateau, you are assigned the next thing so that you can continue to grow and then you don't get bored.
So Enrique, the focus there was around the idea of the work role you have in your organization.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conversation Kurt and I have been having lately is around maybe there's other aspects of your life that you would want your employer to be familiar with.
Yeah.
Because perhaps that could inform them of placing you different better or having you cross business, work cross businesses or collaboration. To what extent, and Kurt, you can help refine this question, but to what extent do you think organizations are ready to get to know people more across their full lives in order to tap into those unknown talent, skills, aspirations that could, feed success in your organization in a new way?
If I can put it into a math equation, that would trend to zero almost. The trend would be to almost zero percentage of how well they know their people. And I want to share with you one little story about me. About 12 years ago, I was fired from the job that I was doing in a company because they hired me to do something. I learned how to do that something. I delivered it, but then nothing changed in my workload and I got bored. So I created another company about something completely different, a different industry, a different field and whatnot. The president, it was a small company, a small family company. The president of the company that I was working for, he found out that I was doing something else and he got so upset that he fired me. And I reflected so much about that. And I continue to reflect so many years later. I continue to reflect about that experience. And I was thinking, he was so silly, and it was a stupid decision. I'm going to tell you why. If he had been smarter, what he would have done would have been, you know what? I'm getting this product or this expertise from Enrique. Enrique is doing he's doing these other things. But while he's doing those other things in his own time, with his own money, he's also learning new skills that if, like a feedback loop, if I can bring those skills back to what he has to do for my company, I'm going to get way more out of him without paying for it than what I would be getting if he would be only dedicated to what he's doing in this company. So it is, to me, that was intuitive, but they decided that it wasn't, and they fired me. So if they had taken the opportunity to, instead of fire me, ask me, and this same applies right now to a lot of workplaces. If they had asked me, like, why are you doing that? Well, because I'm bored here. All right, what are you learning there? How can we make you, how can we engage you more? How can we help you doing what you're doing there so that whatever you're learning there, you also give back here? So we support each other, right? Like in a collaboration approach. And I wish more organizations did that, because right now, so many people get bored at work and they end up doing something outside. How many people we know, colleagues, coworkers, that they do dance classes outside. They do art work. They become, great athletes. They become programmers. They become, whatever it is. To me, the idea here would be, how can I help those people continue doing what they're doing outside while also learning more about them, so so that what they're learning outside of the organization can also make them better inside the organization. We are still so far from that, by the way, because many organizations think they own you and they own your intellectual capital, they own your mind, and that is absolutely not true. So we got a big challenge in there.
Kurt, before you jump in, I'm going to make a fast point, but I speak from my own personal experience to focus on this theme of what's rewarding to me, because I did exactly that. I created a product, an invention, and it was so foreign to me how to proceed with it. But I made a successful product in the marketplace. I had to learn how to do barcodes and make pitches to big companies and create, solve how to get the supply chain going. And I'll say, in these years, it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, because I every day was solving new problems.
Yep.
So I'm back in the environment I've been in, but it speaks to understanding that now I view it as me. My rewards are about me, and how can the organization see that about me to take advantage? Kurt, we've come on many stories like this, including your own pursuit.
Yeah, I just there's so much again that you're saying that Robert and I have talked about. This podcast is great with three people because you can play off, and then when there's a conversation like this going on, it's like I have so many things I want to say.
Cut each other off.
But
it's got it.
No, but what's really, it's somewhat, I don't want to be over dramatic, but it's a little bit sad or depressing is we have not only want to put employees, which by the way, we forget employee means human, right? Yeah. So we want to put human beings in boxes, but we do this in society. The challenges we're having in society right now mirror those that we have in corporations, because we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to say that this corporation is made up of people, but those people are blocks, and we can have different colored blocks and we can put the blocks together and that makes up the corporation. But in a society, everybody has overlapping skills, interests, motivations. They have all of these things, they overlap. It would just look like a mass of color if you actually made some like a diagram of it, it'd just be this thing that was a blur of color. And once you bring people together, they create their own community. They create their own, cliques. They create their own niches. They do all of these things that human beings do. And we tend to forget that. And to that end, I mean, we could talk for hours about this stuff, but I do want to make sure that we touch on some of the, you mentioned before, like inclusiveness and equity and these challenges that we're having in society right now. And again, they're reflected in organizations. I see organizations doing a lot on social media, saying we support people, we do these things. I don't see that mirrored or reflected within the organization. And then I see a lot of corporations who say, we're trying to be inclusive, but we're using AI. And there's never the discussion of the bias that is built into AI, because that bias is in the data that they're feeding into the AI. And we don't have a solution for that yet. And so that's a big question, I know, and I'm throwing it on you, but I do think that you've probably got some thoughts on that. And, how do we deal with that as we move toward something that says we don't want generalists, right? We don't want to train people. And what we want to get specialists in here that can help us today, right now. That's what we're cared about. But we want to be inclusive and we want to not have bias. That seems like two conflicting ideas to me.
Yeah, I think the competing priorities and the competing, I don't want to say principles, but sometimes it happens that there are competing ideas that you need to make sense of, right? As a leader and as an organization. One thing that it's very clear to me is that technology and the advancement of technology is unstoppable. And we can say whatever we want to say about artificial intelligence. That's never going to stop. I mean, there's no way, unless artificial intelligence becomes somehow, with a life of its own and turns against humans, Terminator-like. I'm hoping not. The reality is that technologies like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, biotechnology, quantum computing, all of these things will continue to grow and become better and have a more prevalent space at work and in life in general. So at the end of the day, if you think about it, it continues to be the human. You just mentioned a great example. Artificial intelligence is having all these biases because those biases are being built into the technology via the data that we are feeding it with. That data is collected and is fed into this technology by humans. So far, we know that technology is not creating technology. It is humans creating and programming technology. So unless we become more responsible as humanity and the business leaders of our organizations become responsible, we won't be able to solve this problem because it's very easy to just blame the technology, right? It's very easy to say, oh, my artificial intelligence software was discriminating against black women, like it happened with the Amazon artificial intelligence software that was discriminating against black women. Or my artificial intelligence, dictionary, started saying bad words because we fed it the urban dictionary and now it learned all these words, right? And that's what happened with Google like 5 years ago or something like that. So, the reality is that it's easy to blame the technology, but it's not the technology, it's the humans that are behind that design. So there has to be a lot of responsibility from business leaders. But because, of course, we don't necessarily have to put all our faith in business leaders doing necessarily the right thing, I think there's going to have to be a lot of oversight by, nonprofits, by academia, by the government, by, citizens doing the right thing and keeping a very wide eye and a scrutinizing eye on what companies are doing. And I think because of the role of social media today, it is almost impossible for any company to do something, and to, sort of sweep it under the rug. I think everybody, everything gets to be known at some point in time. So we have to increase that public scrutiny on what private companies are doing with the technology. And whenever they mess up, we need to make sure that we point not our fingers, not necessarily in the direction of the technology, but in the direction of the humans that were behind the determinations that the technology was doing.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quick, Robert. I'm going to let you take over after that. But one of the things that I always try to point out to people is, so I always point out the bias that exists in the data we're feeding into the AI.
Yeah.
But if you think about human beings, we are brought up just like AI. We have data fed into us. And we never discussed the bias in the data that was fed into us.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem. I grew up in specific environments and I was taught by specific people. Research is showing more and more what you're taught from birth to 36 months, 3 years old, is really difficult to change. It's really difficult to get past. And I want to point out too, even this podcast, which Robert and I would think of ourselves as very inclusive and very, very progressive thinking. I don't mean that in a political way, but in a thought way. But having said that, this is our second episode, and so far, you're the first non-white person. But we still haven't had a female on, right? So we've had 6 males talk about these problems, which, by the way, are much more impactful to females than they are to males. So that's something that we keep in mind as we go forward. And I think it's on all of us to, A, be aware of that, B, call it out, and to C, actually do something about it after you're aware of it. And that's kind of where my thought is right now. And I agree with you. I think until we are able to have these honest discussions and honest conversations with ourselves and others, we're not really going to get past that.
Yeah, and if I want to add, I know Robert, you wanted to chime in here, but just to add one more thought. People may wonder, like, how do I do that, right? How do I keep an scrutinizing eye on what my companies are doing and all the things that are happening? To me, it boils down to one very simple thing: get involved. And when I say get involved, what I mean is call your political representatives and ask them to do the right thing. They are not doing the right thing. You got one option: run for office. One thing that we've seen in the past 4 years is a record number of women participating in the political processes, at least in the United States. I love that. Because I think women make way better leaders than, especially political leaders in all senses, but especially political leaders than men. And just get involved, right? Get involved. Just call your leaders and say, what are you doing to make sure that the artificial intelligence that we are developing in our country and around the world is doing the right thing? Oh, you're not doing anything? Well, I'm going to call, I'm going to call my school board representatives. I'm going to call my house representative. I'm going to call my, my state legislature, for them to do the right thing. So ultimately, it all boils down to get involved. Get involved in your community. Get involved in your employee resource groups. Get involved with your associations. Get involved with your political leaders. Because the worst thing that we can do is let others do what they think is best for us. Because more generally than not, they won't have us in mind.
Well, I'm trying to take that in. That was rich information and insight. And the involvement part is key to our voice. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shift the gear a little bit because I was pretty startled by your immediate comment about the viewpoint of organizations and their people and what people may be personally aspiring to, and zero chance that they're ready to have those kinds of to delve in that way. I just wanted to see if there's any potential crack in that iceberg ahead. I'm seeing some points being made by leading organizations. For instance, Walmart has an internal people strategy called Me. It's all about you.
Yeah.
I heard or read through a study by the Adecco Group, a senior HR leader at Microsoft made the point, wouldn't it be better if people said, while the Microsoft workforce tends to say, I work for Microsoft, and Kurt, that gets back to that job role, I do this, or I work for Microsoft. This fellow said, wouldn't it be better if they said, Microsoft works for me? We can help foster this mind shift. There's another author, French author, Laetitia Vitude, who wrote about From Labor to Work. And Kurt and I reflected on the evolution of work, where we probably were generalists establishing the country and building industry and so on, but gradually became specialists. Yeah. And her premise is that we're moving back towards an age of the artisan, which means very individually focused. What do you make of these kinds of statements and the one that you made before about how difficult a possibility is ahead?
I think the trend will continue to push us in the direction of making sure that people can be who they are at work, that they can find meaning, that they can find purpose, that they can find, enjoyment in the work that they do. I think that's a trend. We are pretty far from, any significant change, perhaps in that direction. I mean, we all talk about it, and you go to LinkedIn and everybody's talking about it, but then when you go to the reality, it's like it's not really happening. So there's still a big gap between making it happen and talking about it. But the fact that we've become more aware of how important this is a very, very big step in the right direction, because awareness should, is the first step into action. If you're not aware that you're doing something wrong, or if you think that what you're doing is right, there's little possibility for you to change directions, right? But now if you say, I'm aware that we need to pay more attention to the human. We need to provide the opportunities for growth. We need to also, at the same way that we work for our external customers, we got to work for our internal customers, which are our employees. So I'm thinking, the trend, it's perhaps moving in that direction, of course, led by big organizations that are putting a lot of energy and effort into their employee experience. And I'm hoping to see this become more prevalent in the workplace for more HR leaders, for more business leaders to embrace the principle that, putting the humans in the center of the work that we do is not necessarily providing better technology to serve them or providing better services to them. It's making sure that they are finding life, meaning, direction, purpose, growth at work. And that's hard, because you can be the president of a company with 250,000 employees and say, I want my people to feel the best in this company. But then you try to trickle that down the corporate ladder, and then you find a lot of disconnections between mid managers and mid leaders and whatnot. So it's going to take some time to get there, but I think that's a trend. I think the trend is for this to become more prevalent, because otherwise the reality is that you can't compete. You can't compete in the marketplace if you tell your people, well, I'm going to hire you, and then after a year you continue to do the same thing. Those people are going to leave. They will move on to the next thing. And yet, the pandemic created a big gap in that progression, if you will. Where people were making determinations of what places they wanted to work for, because now, a lot of people are unemployed and they are like, whatever I find, I'm going to get into that job. But when we get back to some level of financial and growth and economic growth, people will again have the opportunity to say, I don't want to work for you, because all you offer me is the same salary that others are offering me, but no growth opportunities. So I don't want to work for you. So you will have a harder time tapping into the best talent of the world. So you will either you change because it's the right thing to do, or you change because you're going to be pushed out of business.
So Enrique, in the summer, I led a workshop on the theme of total rewards, flip the viewpoint. So the viewpoint becoming from my perspective. And I posed this question, and it was a Zoom call, so people were responding in chat. And it said, what words would you include to define total rewards according to employers today? And the words that we got back were like benefits, development, flexibility, opportunity, pay, professional, retirement, work, wellness. So then at the close of the session, I reframed it and I said, what would be the ultimate rewards in your life with your own me viewpoint? And the words shifted. I did a little word cloud. The words came back: helping, leading, learning, growth, impact, purpose, personal, relationship. And it was really interesting because I think that's also what we want to have people say in their workplace even. It was really fascinating to see that shift from corporate to personal.
Yeah. And if you look at, I haven't used or talked about happiness here because I generally like to talk about the word enjoyment more than happiness, because you can enjoy something even if that something is making you, sometimes unhappy, right? I mean, you're mad at something that you're doing because you can't resolve it, so you're not happy at that one moment. But the overall, effect is enjoyment. But when you look at the causes of happiness, always you find in the top 5 relationships, that community that you're building, that network that you're building, but not just as in finding job, but as a network that is helping you grow and you're contributing to them and you're building relationships. And at the same time, the enjoyment of the craft at hand, right? The enjoyment of what you are actually doing. And if what you're doing is boring, is disengaging, is the same thing day in and day out for 10 years, you lose that source of happiness. You lose that source of enjoyment. So that's why, any workplace that is really serious about putting the human in the center of all they do, they got to be thinking about how do we help people find meaning, find purpose, enjoyment, and evidently, build the relationships that will also, help them achieve that, while they also help others achieve what they whatever they want to do. So that's challenging, because for the business leader and for HR, that's something that you need to make happen, while at the same time connecting all that with making the business succeed. So the only problem here is that very often you find business leaders thinking that helping somebody find meaning is contradictory with helping the business succeed. And to me, they are all in the same direction. If you help people find meaning at work, your business should succeed. You can't be pro-business if you're not pro-people, and you cannot be pro-people if you're not pro-business. So that to me is bottom line here.
I want to throw this out there. It's not a happy topic, but I want to touch on it. Something I sent to Robert last week, and I really do believe it ties together almost everything we've talked about on this call. And I think it's probably a great way to kind of tie off our conversation. But, I didn't know who Tony Hsieh was, for better or worse. Mm-hmm. And until I saw all the I'm sure I saw his name before. I grew up in tech and I know tech startups, but I didn't pay much attention. But I think that we talk about rewards at work or community at work. At the end of the day, people do things because they want to support other people. Mm-hmm. They're supporting those relationships. They're supporting, whoever they feel, needs support, or they want support themselves. And that human piece, which is something we've touched on multiple times in that call, is so important. Yeah. And it felt to me from everything I read that that's what he was searching for. That's what he was trying to build as a leader. And it was really difficult in this country to achieve that. Yeah. And having said that, I mean, what is your take? What's your understanding? You might know more about it than me, but given that outcome, I'm not saying that he's obviously an outlier, but given that outcome, how do we learn something from that and take something from all accounts was a good guy who was trying to do the right thing? How do we all take something from that and make ourselves better as we go forward? Yeah.
I think one thing that Tony Hsieh had was that I don't think he was bound by preconceived assumptions about how things should work, right? He was more of, in my view, of the idea of this is how things have been, but it doesn't mean that they should be that way. So we can reinvent the wheel, and to reinvent the wheel, or to invent a better wheel for that matter, we have to be able to experiment. The concept of holacracy. It was experimentation in the workplace space, right? In the workplace design, in organizational design. That was a shot of to experiment with something new, with a new idea, with a new process, a new framework, and to me, it's very evident that industries are different, things are changing so fast, companies are different, regions are different. So the underlying principle should be just be open to experiment. Be open to try new ideas, be open to create new things, be open to reimagine, transform, re-engineer the way things are. Along the way, make sure that you're communicating what's going on. Make sure that you're involving your people in the process. I mean, the worst thing that you can do is try to reimagine something and then push it down to your people without having asked them in the first place if they thought that made sense or not. So that would be from the business leader perspective. It's a little bit of experimentation, communication, and a lot of empowerment to get as much as you can from your people to be part of that design process, and from the people that are also part of this to know that, things fail, things fall apart. And you may create something that looks beautiful and then it falls apart, right? And then you think like, why did it, why is this falling apart? Well, because you created it 5 years ago when the world was different. And, the world is different today, and it will be different in a year from now. And as a matter of fact, the world will be different faster than it ever was different before. So, you're going to have to be okay with the idea that things fall apart. And what matters is not the actual thing that is falling apart, but the fact that you are open-minded and creative, and you have the capacity to experiment, to create the new thing that will make sense for the next period of time until it falls apart again. So that to me, it's a combination of two things, right? And that's what I think Tony Hsieh and other business leaders, like, there's Dan Price. I think he should be somebody that you should look into. Dan Price from Gravity Payments. This guy lowered his salary from $1 million a year to $70,000 a year to be able to give everybody else $70,000 a year. And only this year, because of the pandemic, they didn't grow at the same pace they were growing before, and they have not laid off anybody in their company so far this year. Kudos to them. And he's experimenting with something new. Maybe tomorrow he says, what? I need to increase my salary a little bit. It's not. I mean, I'm not. I need to get $100,000 instead of the $70,000 that everybody else is getting. I don't know if they're going to do that, but it's okay if they end up doing it, right? Because maybe when they do it, if they do it, that's when it makes sense for them, and they will have a rationale of why they are making that new determination. What they did, which is really powerful, is they are experimenting with something completely different, and I love that. I love that idea of experimenting.
Yeah, I'll say very quickly, I know Dan Price and the work he's done. And I loved when it got to a point where he thought he might have to lay people off. Instead of him making a decision, he went and met with every single employee and told them the situation and got their feedback.
Yeah.
And they actually decided, a lot of people decided to take pay cuts so they wouldn't have to do layoffs. And so, again, different way. I do want to be respectful of time. I know we booked 30 minutes.
We said 20 minutes.
We're about an hour in at this point.
Oh my gosh.
So what I wanted to do was just let Robert, if there's anything that you want to touch on, feel free to do it. Otherwise, we can give Enrique some time here and then kind of.
Yeah, I think I'll just summarize with a comment you made the other day, Kurt, to this effect. What if an organization was as much a resource for its workforce members as the members are resources for the organization? And I think that's what we're striving to learn about ourselves in this podcast series, inviting really respectable and credible guests, provocateurs, and that's how we're going to proceed as we explore this to learn for ourselves the meaning of some of these things. So thanks for joining us.
A friend of mine and I were having a conversation, and we said, with all the changes, the name changes HR has gone through, we gotta understand the underlying principle here, which is we're not human resources. We should be resources for humans. And that completely changes. It's not just a change of, it's not just switching up the words. It's just a completely different mindset when you think as yourself as a resource to elevate others. And I think that's what we are for.
Well, Enrique, thank you again. This was amazing. I actually want to just set up a weekly interview with you so that we can continue this. But I do want to just give you a minute. What are where can people find the work you're doing? Is there anything you need if we put this out there? Anybody who sees it, what do you want to let them know about you and the work you're doing?
They can just go to LinkedIn, follow me, Enrique Rubio, follow HackingHR, and all the work that we're doing. I have an unwavering belief in the power of HR to be really a trailblazer, leading people, organizations, and I am hoping that you, me, and many others are sort of filling up that gap to or building a bridge to bring those. To close that gap between the potential of doing something or to achieve something and actually, delivering that potential. And that's what I'm doing. So, please feel free to reach out to me, hackinghr.io, LinkedIn, Enrique Rubio, and the HackingHR LinkedIn page. Here we are, trying to put a little bit of some good work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And, we'll let you know when it's coming out, and we'll be in touch soon. I've got my HackingHR subscription, so I'm all set.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon, guys. Thank you and happy holidays. All right.
All right. You too.
Thank you.
Best wishes.
Bye-bye now.